Robin Hood, Part 3. Robin Hood was a helpless captive in the hands of Prince John. The evil prince had ordered Robin's immediate death, and now, as the executioner walked menacingly towards him, Prince John smiled with satisfaction. At last he would get rid of this troublesome outlaw once and for all. "Off with his head!" he roared gleefully. But meanwhile, Little John, dressed in his disguise as the Duke of Chutney, had crept up behind the velvet curtain of the royal box, and was at this very moment pointing a dagger at Prince John's back. "Set my friend free," he whispered through the curtain, "or I'll make a pincushion out of you." Gulped the prince. "Untie the prisoner." "Untie the prisoner, your majesty?" repeated the mystified Sheriff of Nottingham. But surely you can't mean you want to let Robin Hood go." "Ouch!" cried the terrified prince as he felt the dagger pressed hard against his back. "You heard what I said?" he roared. "Let the prisoner go immediately!" Hardly able to believe the royal command, the executioner dropped his axe, and the guards began to untie the rope. But then pandemonium broke out. The sheriff discovered Little John behind the royal box, and they began a tremendous fight. Prince John trembled with rage, and now that he was out of danger, he shouted to the guards, "Kill Robin Hood! Kill Maid Marian! Kill them both!" All the animals of the royal guard joined in the battle, but Robin and Little John fought them off valiantly, with the help of Friar Tuck and the villagers. With all the commotion, the tournament tent collapsed, and in the panic that followed, Robin Hood realized this would be a very good moment to escape. He grabbed Maid Marian's hand and beckoned to his followers, and they ran as fast as they could into the safety of Sherwood Forest. Robin Hood gazed at Maid Marian. She looked very beautiful in the moonlight. "I know I'm only a poor outlaw, but will you marry me and come to live in the greenwood?" Maid Marian made no reply, but simply hugged her beloved Robin, and the whole forest seemed to join in a celebration dance. The animals sang and played musical instruments. Little John had a fine time making up a rather rude song about Prince John, and the party went on deep into the night. But for Prince John, there were certainly no happy celebrations that evening. After Robin and the others escaped from the tournament field, he cried miserably and stuck his thumb in his mouth. "Hiss!" he wailed, calling for his servant. "Sir Hiss, where are you?" He didn't know that Friar Tuck had locked the evil snake up in a barrel of beer, and by the time Prince John discovered him, he was extremely drunk and no use at all. The furious prince grabbed Sir Hiss and almost throttled him in his rage, then tied up his tail in a knot. "Get out of that if you can, you stupid, worthless, no-good snake!" he yelled, and he threw him down in disgust. Several days later, Sir Hiss still hadn't recovered from the humiliation he had suffered at the hands of his master. He was sitting miserably at his desk in the castle when the sheriff burst in, humming and grinning to himself. "Hey, Hiss," he laughed. "Have you heard this one about the prince? He'll never be known as John the First. He's sure to be known as John the Worst. When he doesn't get his own way, he flies into a state. He sticks his thumb in his mouth, and then he feels just great." Sir Hiss laughed spitefully. "What? What did you say?" thundered a voice from the doorway, and they realized that Prince John had been listening to every word. "So, you sing rude songs about me behind my back, do you?" roared the angry prince. "Well, it's a catchy song, and it's very popular. All the villagers are singing it," said the sheriff nervously. "Oh, they are they?" he roared. "Well, I'll make them sing a different tune. From this moment I shall double their taxes. No, I won't. I shall treble them." It turned out to be a sad day for the poor people of Nottingham. Prince John and the sheriff had taken all their money as it was, and they had no more left to pay the new taxes with. So one by one, they were arrested and thrown into jail. It was a sorry sight to see them chained up in the dark and gloomy prison, huddled together in their misery. Outside the jail, the rain poured down as if to echo the tears of the prisoners. Friar Tuck rang the church bell with a heavy heart, knowing that no one could turn up for the service because they were all in jail. In fact, he and the church mice seemed to be the only people who were still free. "Even our poor box is empty," he said. "The people are starving in prison, and we haven't even got a penny to buy them a morsel of food." "Oh, dear," murmured one of the mice, scuttling into her mousehole and coming back clutching a penny coin which he gave to Friar Tuck. Just as he dropped the coin into the poor box, the sheriff strode into the church. "It seems I popped in at exactly the right moment. How fortunate," he said, as he took the penny and put it in his pocket. You big, fat, greedy thief," shouted Friar Tuck, unable to control his anger. "How dare you steal from the poor box? And how dare you speak to me like that?" the sheriff shouted back. "Just get out of my church," threatened the friar, giving the sheriff a shove. "Get out!" The sheriff was outraged. "I arrest you as a traitor to the crown," he cried, and dragged the friar out towards the jail. When Prince John heard that Friar Tuck had been clapped into jail, he was delighted. "That's terrific," he told Sir Hiss. "Tomorrow we'll hang the friar at a public execution." But your highness," even the cruel snake was horrified, "Friar Tuck is a man of the church. You're going to hang a man of the church?" "Of course I am, you stupid serpent. I'm using him to trap Robin Hood. He's the one I really want to hang. He's bound to try and rescue the friar from the gallows tomorrow, and when he comes, my men will be ready and waiting for him. You see what a clever plan it is." Yes, of course, sire," Sir Hiss said, trying not to sound as doubtful as he felt. So the sheriff was ordered to build a scaffold in the castle yard. He set to work immediately with his helpers, two ugly vultures called Nutsy and Trigger.
"Oh, what a lovely scaffold,"
crowed Trigger when they'd finished.
"A beautiful scaffold,"
echoed Nutsy, for public hangings were their favourite form of entertainment. They were still admiring their handiwork when an old blind beggar approached them and tapped his stick against the gallows. "What can this be?" he muttered to himself. "I wonder what's going on." "Well, I'll tell you, old man," laughed the sheriff. "This is where Friar Tuck is going to be hanged." Well, croaked the old beggar. "I've heard that the friar is a friend of Robin Hood's. Would there be trouble if Robin Hood shows up?"
"But that's the whole idea,"
Nutsy blurted out.
"It's a trick to—" "Hush, be quiet, you fool,"
snapped Trigger, giving the old beggar a suspicious look.
"That old man is too curious. He knows too much, if you ask me. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a spy."
"Oh, shut up, Trigger," said the sheriff impatiently. "He's just a useless old beggar. Let him go on his way." But of course, this was no beggar. It was that master of disguise, Robin Hood himself. And as soon as he had hobbled out of sight, he threw off his rags and hurried to find Little John. "Oh, no," said Little John in dismay when he heard the news. "What can we do? We'll have to break into the jail tonight and get the friar safely away from here." "Break into the jail? But that's impossible," cried Little John. "We'll have to find a way," Robin Hood said earnestly, "or Friar Tuck will die at dawn." So, with no time to lose, they began to plan their mission.
Merlin's Magic. the magician was dozing in front of a blazing fire one wet November day when he heard a strange sound outside. Squeak! Squeak! Merlin, come quickly! It was the voice of Walt, the boy who was later to become King Arthur. A wicked wizard has put a spell on Sir Ector. Merlin hurried outside and saw Sir Ector standing there in his suit of armour. Sir Ector tried to raise his arm to shake hands with Merlin. Squeak! His armour made a dreadful noise, and Sir Ector could hardly raise a finger. He's getting stiffer every minute, wailed Walt. It must be a very strong spell. Please do something. Merlin began to laugh. It's not a spell, you silly boy. The rain has rusted Sir Ector's armour. That's why he can't move. Oh, is that all? Gasped Walt, very relieved. Merlin waved his wand, and Sir Ector's armour fell off, one piece after another. Clink, clank, clonk. Oh, thank you, sighed Sir Ector. I do feel better now. But please, can you work some magic to stop my armour rusting again? Merlin waved his wand, and suddenly Sir Ector was holding a cane with a hooked end, wrapped all around in a strange sort of silk. Merlin pressed a button on the cane, and with a whoosh, the silk unfolded. Sir Ector was speechless. What was he meant to do with this contraption? It's an umbrella, explained Merlin, beaming, to hold over yourself next time you wear your armour in the rain. But you must look after it well. It will be many years before anyone actually invents an umbrella. But Walt and Sir Ector weren't listening. They had already rushed off to test Merlin's magic in the pouring rain to see if it worked. And of course it did. Donald's Dream Cottage. Donald decided it was time his nephews learnt about the joys of country life. So he rented a cottage in the country, left the car at home, and they all set off by train. So we can take healthy country walks, Donald told his nephews, who all groaned loudly. Their first healthy walk was sooner than expected. From the station to the cottage. 3 miles, with suitcases, mostly uphill. "Don't they have taxis in the country, Uncle Donald?" wailed Huey, Louie and Dewey. "Walking's good for you," snapped Donald. As soon as they reached the cottage, Donald began to organise dinner. "Go and pick a lettuce from the garden, Huey, and dig up some potatoes. Dewey and Louie, you go to the farm for some eggs and milk. There's nothing like fresh country food." It was a long way to the farm, so Dewey and Louie took a shortcut on the way back. As they hopped over a fence to cut across a field, Dewey heard a noise and looked back. "I say, Louie," he said nervously, "there's a big cow following us, and it looks angry." "That's not a cow, it's a bull!" exclaimed Louie, and the pair of them took to their heels and fled. "Phew! That was a close thing," said Dewey, as they vaulted over the fence. "Oh dear," said Louie, looking down into the basket. "Uncle Donald won't be pleased. We've scrambled the eggs." But when they got back to the cottage, they found Donald standing on a chair, waving a broom and shouting, "Chew!" and "Go away!" "What's wrong, Uncle?" asked the 2 boys. "Ants," said Donald dramatically. "Ants all over the place." The ants were marching across the floor and up the table leg, following the trail of a leaky bag of sugar. "Don't worry, Uncle Donald," chuckled Louie. "I'll get rid of them." He picked up the sugar bag and laid a trail of sugar back out of the door. Soon the ants were heading outside again, following the sugar. Just then, Huey came in with a rather limp-looking lettuce and some scrawny potatoes, and Donald forgot about the ants. Soon they all sat down to eat. "You can't beat homegrown food," said Donald, tucking in. "You can taste the freshness." Giggling, the triplets pointed at Donald. He was just about to munch a juicy caterpillar wriggling among the lettuce leaves. "Ugh!" said Donald, dropping his fork. "Ugh! Well, I'm not hungry at the moment anyway. And it's time for bed, he said, glaring at his nephews. Early to bed and early to rise in the country. But Donald didn't realise quite how early. The next morning he was woken by the birds singing and the sun streaming through his window. It wasn't until he'd leapt out of bed that he saw it was only 5 o'clock in the morning. He crawled back to bed to try and sleep, but the birds kept him awake. "Drat the things," he grumbled, and stuck his fingers in his ears and pulled the covers over his head. "I thought it was supposed to be quiet in the country." Donald was just dropping off when Huey, Louie and Dewey bounded into the room and woke him up again. "Time to get up," they shouted. "Go away," said Donald. "Go for a walk to work up an appetite for breakfast." Donald peered out of the window. It was hot and sunny already. He would go and finish his snooze in the garden. Still in his nightshirt and nightcap, he fetched a deck chair from the shed and set it up in the sun. Just as he lowered himself into it with a contented sigh, there was a ripping sound and the canvas gave way. Donald sat down hard on the ground. "Help!" he squawked, struggling wildly. "Get me out of here!" But Huey, Louie and Dewey couldn't hear. They'd gone for their long walk. "Why didn't I spend my holiday quietly at home?" groaned Donald. "It's much more relaxing than the country." The Ugly Duckling. One beautiful day in late spring, a mother duck was sitting on her nest in the tall grass near the water's edge. She was keeping 5 eggs warm in the nest beneath her, and she sat quietly waiting for them to hatch. Mother Duck was beginning to be rather tired of waiting, for it seemed to be taking a very long time. At last, one by one, the eggs began to move and then to crack. Cheep, 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 cheep. 4 of the tiny ducklings poked their heads out of their shells. As they stumbled out and fluffed out their yellow down, Mother Duck looked on, feeling very proud. But where was the 5th duckling? She looked into the nest. The biggest egg still lay there, unhatched. Wearily, Mother Duck settled herself on top of it. "How much longer is this going to take?" she asked herself. It was another whole day before there were signs of movement from the big egg, but at last the shell cracked and out tumbled a large and rather ungainly duckling. "Onk!" he said in a most unduck-like voice. Father and Mother Duck gazed in astonishment at their newest baby, and then at each other. "Oh, he's awfully big for a duckling," said Father Duck doubtfully. "He doesn't look like any of the others. Do you think you could have been sitting on a turkey's egg by mistake, my dear?" "Don't be so stupid," Mother Duck snapped. "How could a turkey's egg have got into my nest?" And they started to quarrel while the duckling watched them, wide-eyed. Mother Duck sighed. She had to admit she was puzzled as she gazed at the clumsy creature. What a big head, and what large, gawky feet. "Well," she said, "we'll soon find out if he's a duckling or not. He can go along with the others for their swimming lesson. We'll soon see if he sinks or swims." And she called her little family to follow her down to the pond. The clumsy duckling followed behind his smaller brothers and sisters, eager to join in and play. But they tripped him and nipped him with their beaks until by the time they reached the pond, he was almost in tears. The 4 little ducklings waddled straight into the water and started swimming around, but the big duckling lingered unhappily on the bank, afraid of what further mischief the others might do to him. "Into the water with you," his mother scolded. "Don't just stand there, you great ugly thing." And with that she pushed him into the pond. Much to everyone's surprise, the ugly duckling not only swam, but he swam strongly and well. When it was time to go home, the mother duck called her ducklings to follow her out of the pond. The ugly duckling was last in line, as usual, and as he scrambled up the bank, the others turned on him and knocked him back into the water.
Go away, they shouted. Don't tag after us, you great ugly thing.
And they waddled off after their mother, without a backward glance at the ugly duckling. He sat in the pond, his tears falling splash, splash, splash into the still water. Why won't they play with me? He wondered. Why does everyone, even my mother, call me ugly? And he looked down into the water, all rippled now from his falling tears. An ungainly creature looked back at him, all lumps and bumps on the rippled surface of the pond. No wonder they call me ugly, thought the duckling sadly to himself. I'll run away and hide so no one can see how ugly I am. The little duckling wandered towards some nearby trees, but it was dark and frightening in their shade, and the little duckling felt very afraid. He was glad when he heard a cheep, cheep from overhead. Looking up, he saw a nest of young birds on a low branch, and the duckling called out to them, "Can I come up and play with you?"
Yes, yes,
peeped the little birds.
come and join us.
Soon the ugly duckling was warm and cosy in the nest with his new little friends. They were all playing happily when suddenly there was a beating of wings just above them and a shrill, scolding bird cry. The mother bird had returned to the nest and was angry and alarmed to find a big stranger sitting amongst her babies.
Out, out, she squawked. Go and find your own family and leave our nest to us.
The ugly duckling leapt out of the nest and scurried off as fast as he could through the trees back to the pond. He crouched miserably in the rushes at the water's edge. "It must be because I am so ugly that nobody wants me," he thought sadly. "I'll just have to live on my own." He stayed on the pond for many weeks, hiding for most of the day and eating water lily roots and anything else he could find. And oh, he was so lonely with no one to talk to and no one to play with. At least, though, there was no one to tease him or call him ugly or be cruel to him. The ugly duckling sighed as he paddled about all by himself. Then one day, a group of graceful little birds swam by. They looked at the ugly duckling and asked him if he'd like to play. "Oh, yes," exclaimed the little duckling. He could hardly believe his good fortune. They all played together the whole afternoon, and not once did anyone chase him or nip him or call him names. The duckling wanted the afternoon to last forever. At the end of the day, his new friend said, "Why don't you come home with us?" The ugly duckling swam across the pond with them, and then he saw the most beautiful bird he had ever set eyes on. She was brilliant white, with a long, graceful neck, and she seemed to sail effortlessly across the water as she swam to meet them. The ugly duckling was so dazzled by her beauty that he forgot to turn away and hide his ugliness. The great white bird glided majestically towards him and lifted her wing. The ugly duckling shrank back, certain that he would be struck or driven off. But instead of blows, he felt the wing encircle him gently. He had never felt anything as soft and downy before. His heart almost burst with happiness. "Why have I not seen you before?" said the bird. "Where have you been, my little lost swan?" "He is the most beautiful of us all!" exclaimed the other little swans as they gathered around. The ugly duckling looked down into the calm water of the pond and saw his own reflection for the second time, only now it wasn't at all lumpy and bumpy as it had been before. The little swan gazing up at him was far from ugly. "Come along, my children," said the mother swan. "It's time to go home." And proudly the family of swans sailed out onto the pond, taking with them the ugly duckling, who was ugly no more. Watching them glide by, the mother duck said to her family, "There go the swans. Aren't they the most beautiful creatures you have ever seen?" Holding his head high, the little swan followed his new family, brimming over with joy to have found his true home at last.
It's a jumper of sorts. Pooh woke up humming. He was in an exceptionally good mood. The sun was shining, but that wasn't it. There was breakfast to look forward to, and dinner, and tea, but that wasn't it either. Pooh's good mood was because this was the day he had chosen to knit himself a jumper. Kanga had given him some needles and blue wool and had shown him how to do the stitches. "I shall be the smartest bear in the forest," said Pooh as he cast on the stitches. "Well, I'm the only bear in the forest, but if there were any others, I should be the best dressed." Clickety-click went the needles. "Plain one, pearl one," went Pooh. The clock struck 11, and he was still working when there was a knock on the door. Before he could say, "Come in," Tigger had bounced into the room and skidded to a halt by the table. "Hello, Pooh," said Tigger, looking at the balls of wool and thinking that here was an opportunity to show off his juggling skills. "What are you knitting?" "What does it look like?" Pooh held up the piece of knitting. It wasn't really a square, or even a circle. Only one thing was certain. It was blue. A face flannel?" Tigger asked politely. "No," came the answer. Tigger sniffed at the wool as if this might help him to decide. "Curtains? A teapot warmer? A handkerchief?" "No." "What does it look like?" "You wear it," Pooh hinted. "I wear it!" exclaimed Tigger, bouncing up and down with excitement and setting the plates rattling on the dresser. "Oh, Pooh, you're knitting me a pair of trousers, and in my favourite colour, too. How very kind." "No, I'm not," said Pooh, dropping several more stitches. "Besides, you don't wear trousers." "That's only because no one has ever knitted me any. Please, Pooh. Oh, please." "No, it's a jumper for me. I'm sorry, but I've started it already, and when I've finished it I shall be the best-dressed bear in the forest." Tigger stopped bouncing then, and began pacing instead. Pooh couldn't decide which was worse. "Please sit still," he begged, forgetting how many stitches he had counted, and whether he was meant to be on plain or pearl. Tigger looked hurt. Then he asked, "What's that?" "What?" "This." Tigger pulled at a loose thread which trailed from the main knitting. "I don't know," said Pooh, scratching his head in a puzzled way. Tigger pulled some more. "It's getting longer," he announced brightly, glad to be of assistance. Pooh thought something was not quite right, but by the time he realized what it was, Tigger had drawn out the thread until the blue knitting was completely unravelled. "Oh," said Tigger. "Oh," said Pooh, who was so taken aback he could think of nothing more original to say. "Let us start again," suggested Tigger, hoping that Winnie the Pooh might now consider knitting a pair of trousers. So Pooh started all over again. "I'm making something for myself," he said as he cast on. "Now please let me get on with it." But it was difficult to concentrate, because when Tigger wasn't muttering, "Plain one, pearl one," under his breath, or juggling with the remaining balls of wool, or showing off how high he could bounce, he was saying things like, "Pity it's going to be a jumper. Pair of trousers, just what I need." And he always seemed to say something when Pooh was at a difficult bit. Pooh very patiently began to count stitches. 94, 95, 96, prompted Tigger, eager to contribute something. 96, 97, 98, 99, reminded Tigger. "Why don't you go into the forest and count the acorns?" suggested Pooh. "I'm keeping you company, that's why." "Oh, yes, I forgot." Just then one of the balls rolled off the table. "I'll get it!" shouted Tigger helpfully. He scooted round the room after the runaway wool, chased it between the legs of the chair, then pursued it under the bed, where he remained for a long time. There might have been a wrestling match in progress for all the growling and scuffling that went on. Eventually he emerged, covered in fluff and biscuit crumbs, and holding the dusty, tangled wool. "I'll rewind it into a nice tight ball," he reassured Pooh, who looked a little doubtful. Tigger was quiet for several minutes, which was a relief, and Pooh was beginning to really concentrate, when a strangled voice announced, "I say, would you mind giving me a hand? I'm in a bit of a spot." Pooh glanced over his knitting to see Tigger bound tightly to a chair. I don't know how it happened," Tigger went on, while his friend tried to untie him.
I was practicing my knots.
But try as he might, and he did try quite hard, Pooh could not undo Tigger. "We'll just have to wait for Christopher Robin to call," he said, taking up his needles once more, and knowing that with Tigger all tied up, the knitting would be finished in no time. Pooh was just trying on his new blue jumper when Christopher Robin arrived. Tigger, who had been snoring loudly, woke up at that moment too. "What do you think?" asked Pooh, parading up and down.
It's a funny shape.
Ventured Tigger, as Christopher Robin kindly helped to free him. "I don't know that it's you, exactly," suggested Christopher Robin.
One of the arms is longer than the other, admitted Pooh as he studied his reflection in the looking-glass. And the bottom's too tight.
And the left side's a bit baggy.
And the neck's rather loose.
"Do you know," said Christopher Robin, "that jumper would make a lovely pair of trousers for Tigger." And that was how Tigger got a lovely pair of blue knitted trousers, even though he never seemed to wear them, and how Pooh, by giving up his attempts at knitting, remained the best-dressed bear in the forest.
I had a little nut tree. I had a little nut tree. Nothing would it bear but a silver nutmeg and a golden pear. The King of Spain's daughter came to visit me, and all because of my little nut tree. I skipped over water, I danced over sea, and all the birds in the air couldn't catch me.